right, good morning, everybody. Apologize for my voice. I'm still recovering from sore throat, so bear with me. But we'll go ahead and get started here. If you got questions, go ahead and post them. It's going to be below the video if you're on a smaller screen, to the right of the video if you're on a larger screen. All right, so Poirier says, when chipping every once in a while, the ball will shoot right. Doesn't seem to be off the hosel. Not sure what's happening. Can you give me common faults and fixes to prevent this? Well, if it shoots off to the right like that, it's either going to be off the hosel or it's going to be off the toe, because you're not generally going to come into impact suddenly with the face just wide open, right? You're not going to make normal chips and then suddenly, the face is wide open. So it's either going to be off the toe or off the hosel. So whichever one of those it is, I would shoot a video to kind of see what's going on there, because usually if you have a common, like a tendency of something like hitting it off the toe or hitting it off the hosel, usually it's not everything's great and then all of a sudden you're just way off that one time. Usually you're a little bit off and then you just get a little bit more off. So what I mean by that is, let's say it is hosel strikes, right? Well, if that's the case, then usually what's probably happening is you're probably hitting a lot of your chips off the heel, and then sometimes they're kind of coming off the hosel. It usually doesn't happen to where you're hitting everything off the center of the face, and then all of a sudden you hit one off the hosel like several times. Like if that's a tendency, if it's something that's happening every now and then, I mean, tour players hit hosel strikes. I was watching the U.S. Open yesterday morning and saw, although he's an amateur player, I saw a guy hit it off the hosel, right? And I mean, guys that are playing the U.S. Open, those guys that qualify, the amateurs that qualify to be in the U.S. Open, they're playing their best golf right now. Like, they're not hitting any hosel rockets, but he did. So that will happen every now and then. But if it's hit a tendency, meaning, a couple times around, you're getting the ball shoot off to the right like that, it's either because you're hitting it off the toe or you're hitting off the hosel. So I would try to figure out which one of them it is. Look at it on video. Use some foot powder spray, something, so that way you can see where you're striking it on the face, and then make an adjustment from there. So let's say you're hitting everything off the toe. And if that's the case, a common reason for that is to be cutting across the ball too much. So let's say you're hitting all of your chips off the toe, and then every now and then you hit one so far off the toe that it's kind of like what we call a toe shank, right? If that's what's happening, what usually is happening is the hands are moving too far to the left through contact or toward you, and that gets the strike more on the toe. So I would try to feel like your hands are moving more out away from you as you're coming through contact, and that will get that strike more in the center of the face. If it is a toe shank, it sounds like it probably is. If you don't think it's off the hosel. Now, if it's off the hosel, it could be the opposite. It could be you're swinging too much from the inside with your chips. It could be you're standing too close to the golf ball. It could be there's lots of things that could be going on there. So those would be some things that I'd be looking at. Apologize for the way I sound today, guys. I'm feeling better today. It's just my throat's still a little bit sore. All right, so let's keep going. All right. So GJB819 says, on a full swing, what is meant by from this point you can turn left as hard as you can and the ball will go straight? I asked this the other day. However, our power went out for hours and I don't know if it was answered. So good question. So basically, typically what that means is that you've got the club in the right position coming down, meaning you don't have to make any sort of compensation in the downswing to get the club where it needs to be. So for example, if I'm coming down and I get this club nice and shallowed out, all right, so by lead arm parallel, if I have this club in a good position, nice and shallowed out, then I can just turn hard as I want through impact. And I know that club I know that club's going to be on plane. I know I'm going to have that club face squared up. I know everything's going to be in a good spot. If I have that club shallow and that face square already, I can just turn hard through impact. I know the ball's going to go straight. If we don't have the club shallow, let's talk about what happens if I don't have the club shallow, right? So if I'm coming down steep, right? If I turn as hard as I want through contact, well, I'm just going to come way over the top. I'm going to hit a terrible shot, right? So if I'm here, if I'm steep and I want to get this club on plane, well, now I have to stand up and flip at it, right? Because standing up gets the club more on plane. Now I can hit a functional shot, but I'm not going to be able to turn and burn it, as they say, right? So that's basically what that means, is just getting the club on plane. Having the club on plane and square as soon as possible means I can turn through it. So if you want to work on doing that, what I'd recommend doing is working through our 20-minute shallowing fix, because that's a course that's really going to help you to be able to pull that off. To get to the 20-minute shallowing fix, click the instruction tab at the top, then click the 20-minute shallowing fix from there. One other note is, if you ever ask a question and you miss the answer to your question, you want to go see if it was answered, you can always watch the archived office hours. To get to the archived office hours, just click the office hours highlights, and then scroll down to the bottom of the office hours highlights, and you'll find the archived office hours there. Excuse me, I don't want you to see me wiping my nose. All right, let's keep going here. So David P says, during the start of the forward transition, what is the sequence? Lateral move to left, pressure shift to left foot, and then swing. Is the lateral move focused on hips only, or does it include the total left side? Yeah, so there's going to be, as we're going up to the top, right? So as we are kind of approaching the top of the swing, we're going to have some movement forward toward our lead side, right? And then I'm going to apply pressure, and then I'm going to push and go through. The head is going to move forward a little bit, but it's mainly the lower body that's moving forward, right? So I'm getting lateral movement, and my head staying pretty stationary. It may move forward a little bit, but it's not going to move forward a ton. And that's how we get an increased spine angle, right? That's what we talk about in the stable fluid spine course, right? We want to be slightly angled away at a dress somewhere 6 to 8 degree range. When we go up to the top, we're going to be in that 6 to 8 degree range of our spine at the top of the swing. So basically the overall angle of my body here is going to be the same when I get up here, right? And then when I come to impact, because my hips have moved forward and my head doesn't move forward as much, right? It will move forward some, but it doesn't move forward as much. Then I get that increase in my spine angle there. It's more so with the driver because we're wider with the stance. But the sequence is lateral shift, right? Pressure, opening up the body as we're coming in. Round up. All right, next question here. So Robert L. says, good morning. I understand the importance of maximum lag and full wrist hinge release from my driver. But what about my 9-iron? I hit it 145. Is it important that I hit it 155 yards with maximum lag, or 6-iron with maximum lag? Thank you. Yeah, it's not as important as it is with the driver, right? We're not trying to hit, the difference between our driver and our irons is that we're definitely trying to hit our driver as far as we can, right? You're going to be more benefited from hitting it as far as you can. Now, with the irons, it's just about hitting it a certain distance. It's really important that you hit it a certain distance. But what I will say is that you're going to be a better player if you can hit your irons farther too, right? So, I used to be kind of, I think maybe in the same line of thinking it sounds like you were in, where I thought, well, I don't really care about how far I hit my irons, because if I need more club, I'll just hit, if I need to hit farther, I'll just hit an extra club, right? But then you realize that the reason why if you're able to hit your driver far enough, right, that means that you've got good speed. And if you're applying that speed to your irons and you're not getting the distance out of those irons, it's most likely because you're not really compressing your irons very much. And that makes it to where that is a huge disadvantage usually, because you're hitting the ball high and weak. So you basically you're turning your 9-iron into a wedge. So ideally, what you'd want to do, now I don't know what your club head speed is or anything like that, but you want to be able to get good shaft lean with your irons to be able to compress them, and that it usually takes a good amount of lag to be able to do that. That's essentially what lag is. Lag is the club trailing behind the hands. That is shaft lean. So you don't want to work on getting that great lag and release with the driver, and then early release the irons, because that's gonna be difficult to be a good ball striker if you do that. Now, if that works for you, great, no problems there. But I used to kind of be in the same boat. Basically, played my college golf doing that, where I really early released my irons, hit very high weak shots. Played in a lot of windy conditions. Was hitting a lot of 5-irons from like 160 yards, not very far. And because I couldn't keep the ball out of the wind, I had to use a lot less loft. So I had to get pretty skilled. And I didn't know any better at the time, but I had to get pretty skilled at hitting low lofted clubs, shorter yardages to keep it out of the wind a little bit. Whereas if I could have just worked on my swing a little bit and got more shaft lean, I would have been in better shape with it. But if I would have known now what I knew, or if I would have known then what I know now, might have had a different college career, hopefully. So David P says, thank you, Q. No problem. All right. So Ted D says, hi, Q. It seems like most of the TSG instruction is directed towards golfers who slice. I continue to hook my woods in irons. What, apart from TSG system, would I review to help with this issue? Well, I would say that, the TSG instruction isn't necessarily geared toward people who slice. But a lot of times your hook is probably caused by the same thing. Most people I see who hook aren't hooking because they're swinging because they're coming in too shallow and the face is too closed. It's usually because they're coming down steep and the face is a little closed. That's usually what's going on. So now most people who are coming down steep are slicing it, but there are a lot of people who are coming down steep who are also hooking it. So I bet you to say that's probably what you're doing. And the good part is that you're already, if you go through the 20-minute shallowing fix, the sequence, you're going to be able to blast through those first two parts because you've already taken the next step, right? Which is getting the face close to the path. So what you need to do now is just get the path out to the right and then tone it down. So that's probably more than likely what needs to happen. It'd be hard to say without seeing your swing, but the main thing I know is that your face is close to your path. All right. So what you need to do is get your path probably out to the right more into out, and then get the face less closed. And I would recommend working through the 20-minute shallowing fix to do that. Basically, what you'll need to focus on is drill number 2 and drill number 3. So drill number 2 is where you get the ball to start to the right and hook, right? And then drill number 3 is where you tone it down. So that's probably where you need to work through. So you're already a step ahead of where the slicers are, which is a good thing, but you're probably hooking for the same reasons that the slicers are slicing. It's because you're coming down steep. So that's what I'd be looking at doing. Beyond that, we also have another section on the course. It's called the Never Hook Again course, where we basically go into the two aspects. There's the steep hook, and then there's the swing too much from the inside hook and close the face. So if you are the person, you can look at this clearly on video. If you look on video and you see that you're shallowing out the club a ton, right? The club is way from the inside as you're coming down, then you're in the category. There's a lot less people there. We tend to, want to appeal more to the masses, right? So which is why you're not seeing a ton of videos on people that are shallowing it too much, because there just aren't that many of them. So if you're in that category, then I would recommend looking through our Never Hook Again course and start working through those drills. So if you want to check out either one of those courses, so if you look at your swing and you're steep, then you need to go through the 20-minute shallowing fix and get rid of your hook that way. Basically, you'll blast through drill number 1. You're basically already doing that. You need to go through drill number 2, get the ball start to the right, hook to the left, and then drill number 3, which is where you tighten it up, right? So to get to that course, click the instruction tab, then the 20-minute shallowing fix. Then if you look on video and you see you're really shallowing out the club's way, way behind you, all the way down, club's way too far from the inside, then I'd recommend our Never Hook Again course, which to get to that, all you have to do, which we have 20 plus courses included with your membership. So to get to that, all you have to do is click the house icon that's at the top of the page there. That'll take you to the home page. If you scroll down the home page, you'll see a list of all the courses there. Then you can click the link. All right, we got about 40 minutes or so left. We got some more questions. Again, I apologize for my voice today. I've been sick all week, and I feel better today, but my voice is still not the best. So I do apologize for that. Hopefully next week I'll be back to full strength. While y'all are coming up with questions, I'll just be doing some of my other office stuff I gotta do. Catch up on some things. So Ted B says, where on the downswing should I feel my hands get ahead of the golf ball? It's going to be pretty much right at impact when your hands are going to be ahead of the golf ball. I mean, your hands are going to be behind the golf ball up until basically right at impact is where your hands go in front of the ball. So we got 35 minutes or so left. If we got any more questions. While you guys are coming up with questions, I'm just answering some emails and stuff. I've missed the last couple days, so just catching up on some things. All right. So Bill S says, I recently heard some putting stats for PGA Tour pros that show they don't make many putts over 10 feet. Do you know if their misses are mostly due to misreads, variations in the greens, or mishits? Thanks. Um, So outside of 10 feet, I would say, I think, so I know 8 feet is, they make 50-50, right? Eight feet is 50-50. I believe when you go to 10 feet, they make about 40%. As far as why they miss those, I would say it's probably not missed hits. Tour players aren't miss hitting putts very much. They're pretty much hitting their putts in the center of the face. So I would say it's most likely not miss hits. It's probably a combination of misread and variations in the greens, for sure. The further you get away, the harder it is, right? You get the ball a little offline or whatever, you misread it a little bit, it just makes it harder. So, so I would say it's definitely misreads and variations in the green for sure. I mean, a lot of putting is, when you're putting, the putting surfaces aren't these perfect, you know, they have imperfections in them. So what that means is you could hit a little blade of grass that's off, and it can throw your ball off direction. There can be a little bit of a little rock that you don't really see, and it can hit that, and it can shoot it off in another direction or things like that. So yeah, that can definitely happen. Somebody gets hot with their putter. A lot of it's just luck. You know what I mean? Some days you get lucky, and then some days you have days where you're rolling it really, really good. You're hitting a lot of really good putts, and ball's just not going in, right? So a lot of putting is luck. That being said, there's a ton of skill required in it, and when you're putting, when you look at the best putters, it's not that they're just really lucky. It's just that they're really good putters, and um, they putt well despite the bad luck that you can get sometimes. So, but I would definitely say it's not mishits. It would definitely be misreads and variations in the green for sure. So Willis says, why is it important to finish way up high when the ball is long gone by then? Well, basically, if you come around into a good full finish position, that's a product of delivering as much as you can at the ball at impact. So if you imagine a baseball pitcher, if a baseball pitcher just went like that, right, they wouldn't be able to throw very fast. Well, why would it matter if they end right here if they've already pitched the ball, right? If you look at baseball pitchers, they throw it and their legs kicking up and all this stuff. It's because they're all of their momentum and everything is going forward. So it's the same thing in the golf swing. If you can make a golf swing where you're delivering as much as you possibly can right here, and with very little effort can stop right here, then that'd be fine. But it's just the forces and everything that's happening, right? If you're actually delivering everything you can right here, now if you're hitting a kind of shot where you're trying to drive it in really low, right, and you're trying to kind of come in and stop, right there, that's one thing. If you're trying to hit that kind of shot, that's fine. But if you're trying to hit the ball as far as you can, I mean, imagine a long drive guy, if he kind of had like an umbrella finish, like a Tommy Fleetwood or something like that, they're just not going to hit it as far. Like long drive guys, they're coming around, that club is whipping around so fast that it's whacking them in the back, because they're letting all of their momentum go. So it's important for speed and distance to come around into a full finish, because it's a product of delivering as much as you can, not necessarily as much as you can, but a good amount of speed at the ball. If you're not doing that, if you're coming around and you're just here, right, that means that you're just not delivering much at the golf ball. You're not delivering enough speed to carry for the momentum of everything to kind of carry everything all the way around. That's why on a chip shot, right, if I'm hitting a little chip shot, it's not important for me to do that, because I can hit a little chip shot with very little effort, basically just be right here, and that's the end of it. I didn't put any effort into stopping that. I just let all the natural momentum kind of stop me right there, right? Whereas on a full swing shot, if I were to deliver the right everything well at the ball, then I would have to actually put effort into stopping the club before it comes all the way around. I mean, what happens after you get the ball really doesn't matter. You're definitely right about that. But it matters in the sense that it's a product of doing everything right when you get to the ball, right? And if you're not coming around into a full finish, it means that you're just not delivering the full momentum into the ball. All right, let's keep going. So Keith L says, how can you get more steep with backswing without picking the club up more with the hands, bending over more, or standing closer to the ball? How can you get more steep up more? Bending over more. I mean, those are really the things that you're going to be doing to get the club more steep. Hinging would be another thing. If you're basically hinging the club up in the wrong way, meaning you're kind of going like this, right? So if you're kind of going, you're bending your trail arm. So you're going like this with your trail arm. That's probably what's going on. Is you're most of the time when I see people struggle with bringing the club too far under, right? What they're doing is it's all their trail arm. So they're basically pulling their trail arm in like this. So you see if I do that, what that does to the club. Now that's fine to do as long as you get everything working down and down. So Sam Snead did that, right? Sam Snead brought the club inside and then brought it down just fine. So that's the thing too. As long as the club's coming down fine in the downswing, I wouldn't worry about what your club's doing in the backswing, as long as it's doing fine in the downswing. Now, if in the downswing it's coming down steep and over the top, like if you're going like this, we're bringing it way inside and then going out like this, that's one thing, right? But if you're bringing it inside and then you're bringing it inside in the downswing, then that's completely fine. It only matters how the club is coming down in the downswing. I'd only worry about the backswing if it's making your club do something you don't want it to do in the downswing, right? So, but I would look at it, it's probably your right arm, right? So your trail arm is bringing that club inside. So I try to feel like your trail arm is straighter and your trail wrist is not bending back as much early in the swing. You see there, if I don't bend my trail arm, if I don't do this with my wrist or this with my arm, then that club will come out like this. And then I can bend it later. But if I do this right away, then it's going to come to the inside. Right. So I would look at your trail arm and try to feel like your trail arm is straighter in the start of the backswing. If that is what's happening, you're sucking it inside and then pushing it out late. All right, keep the questions coming. We got about 20 minutes or so keep the questions coming, everybody. So Lee says, good morning, Q. Where should the hips be in line with the feet, vertically speaking? Where should the hips be in line with the feet? They're going to be pretty centered over the ankles for the most part. So if we look at our hips, my hips are going to be pretty centered. I assume that's what you mean. They're going to be pretty centered over my ankles. So I don't want my hips pushed too far back over my ankles, because then I'm gonna want to get them, because that's kind of the balance point. The balance point's kind of right over the ankles. There might be a little bit forward of the ankles, but for the most part, it's going to be between the arches of the feet and the ankles, somewhere in that area. So if I get them too far over this way, I'm going to want to move them back into that position. So if I'm like this at a dress, I'm going to tend to stand up in my backswing to move them into that position. So just have them there already, and then try to keep them there throughout the swing. So a lot of times we'll see people will get the hips moving too far forward, right? The hips get out over my feet, right? And that's going to move me off balance, right? And I'm going to have to kind of push my upper body away to help with that, right? So I want to feel like my hips are kind of staying over my ankles, as I in the backswing and the downswing. So Mauricio R says, in the downswing before impact, is it necessary to bend the spine sideways? Yeah, you're going to have some side bend when you come into contact, right? So if I don't, then what's going to happen is my upper body is going to come down over the top, right? So what Mauricio is asking is, are we going like this, right? So if I keep my hips level, right? If I tilt basically my rib cage down, that's what side bend is, right? So I'm going to be like this at impact. If I'm like this, if I have no bend at impact, then if I'm opening up my body, right, then my shoulders are going to be like this, and I'm going to tend to come way over the top. It's going to be very, very difficult for me not to. So what I have to do is I have to side bend my body, right? So that way I can swing that club from the inside. So yes, we're going to have some bend in our spine as we're coming into contact. Right now, that's what the best ball strikers are doing. Now, poor ball strikers may not have very much. People who are early releasing and standing up out of it, meaning they're squaring up their hips and their shoulders to the ball, right? So they're kind of coming in like this, right? They're going to have a little bit of side bend, and that's only because their trail arm is lower on the club. So it's just to kind of get the trail arm on the club. So basically they'll be kind of coming in like this. But the better ball strikers are going to have more, because the body is opened up. And in order to have this club to come down on plane with the body opening up, we have to side bend our body in order to do it. Otherwise, that club will come way over the top. I suppose it's possible if you have really flexible arms and shoulders and wrists and things like that, you may be able to get this club to kind of be behind you and then also get the club on plane, but very difficult to do. More people are going to be leaning toward more bending in the spine. So Louis says, where should we put the most pressure in the feet area? The ball of the foot closer to the toes or the arch? Depends on what point in the swing are you talking about. So we can talk about that. So basically where you're going to be putting the most pressure in the swing is going to be at lead arm parallel in the downswing. And that's going to be more in the balls of the foot is where that's going to be happening, the balls of the lead foot. So as I start my backswing, I'm going to be in the balls of my foot, and then I'm going to be driving in the heel as I'm going up in this area of my backswing. So it's almost like a pedaling motion, right? So I'm pushing here and pedaling back. So if I'm pedaling a bike, right, I'm kind of going like this. So I'm there and then I'm there. So in my backswing, I'm going to be here and my balls of my foot, then driving into the heel. Then as I'm getting up to the top, I'm driving into the balls of my foot on my lead foot. I'm maxing that out right in this area. Then I'm driving in the heel. But it's going to be mostly in the balls of the foot. But it's not in one place, or it's not just one place where I'm putting any pressure. It's changing as I'm moving dynamically, right? So I'm toe, heel, heel. But where the most of it's happening is in my toes right here when I'm about this part of my swing when we look at the better ball strikers in the downswing. So Ken C says, I keep getting my hands stuck behind me a bit. Is there a good drill to keep my hands in front of my chest to prevent getting stuck? Yes, Ken, I would actually recommend working through our 20-minute shallowing fix where we go through that chopping sequence, right? So when we go through the chopping sequence, we're talking about getting the elbow in front because hitting a golf ball is very much like chopping something, right? If I take this club and it's like an axe, right? If I'm splitting wood, right, I'm driving my elbows down, right? The golf swing is very similar. The only difference is the direction I'm driving my elbows, right? I'm driving my elbows in the direction of the wood. That's my target. I can drive my elbows in the direction of my target here, right? That's the golf swing, right? So this is the same thing as chopping wood, except now I'm just tilting my elbows, right? I'm going to get some spine angle here, and now I'm going to get my body tilted down, and now this is the golf swing, right? So it's the same thing as chopping wood. It's just that we're driving our elbows in the right direction toward the target, and then we're getting some spine tilt, and we're lowering our body down to be able to hit the ball. So the 20-minute shallowing fix kind of goes through that whole sequence for you. That's what I would recommend doing, going through that chopping sequence. So grip the club, we're chopping wood. Now we're basically chopping a tree is what I'd feel like. And then you're chopping the golf ball, right? It's the same kind of feeling. You want to get that same kind of feeling when you're hitting the ball. So go to that 20-minute shallowing fix, click the instruction tab, work through that sequence. Instruction tab, 20-minute shallowing fix, drill number 1. Work through that chopping sequence. And that should really help you to get that trail arm tucked in the better position for you. So we got about 15 minutes left. If we got some more questions. So Ken C says, we spend a ton of time on the full swing. One of the more difficult shots, I think, is a downhill chip to a fast green. Suggestions for feet and ball position. It's really not going to be any different than you would a level chip. It's just that you're going to keep your body. Well, one, I'd use a higher lofted club because when you're on a downhill, and I agree, this is a very difficult shot. When you're on a downhill, you're essentially de-lofting the club, right? The downhill slope de-lofts the club. So I would use as much loft as you have, or that you would, if you don't need, obviously, if you're in a position where you're like short-sighted, you don't have a lot of green to work with, you need a lot of loft on the club. So whatever your highest lofted club is, that's what I'd recommend using, because the slope is going to de-loft you. But you're going to use the same ball position. So roughly about the middle of the stance. This is the same ball position, but you want to keep your body with the slope. I think this shot's really just more difficult because the slope is de-lofting the club, and basically you're just putting yourself in a position where, um, you know, instead of being able to use a high lofted wedge, you're having to use like the pitching wedge. Like the slope is doing that to you, right? You're having to basically hit the shot almost like you're hitting a 9 iron or a pitching wedge from a level lie, which would be really hard to do in some instances if you have a really fast green and you're short sighted. So it also kind of has to be in a situation where you kind of have to take your medicine a little bit. If you're in this kind of position where it's downhill, it's a downhill slope, you got to give yourself a chance. So I think the biggest mistakes people make is they try to baby it and they try to, they try to hit the perfect shot where they have zero margin for error or very little margin for error. And they kind of end up, basically what ends up happening is they'll try to hit the shot and they'll try to hit a spot that they have to hit that spot. Otherwise it's going to be a bad shot. Right. Whereas if you just kind of have the feeling of, okay, I need to hit it, I need to land it in this area, but if I'm a little bit short of that, I'm still going to be fine. If I'm a little bit long of that, I'm still going to be fine. But if you put yourself in where a landing spot is, where if you land it short of that area, you're smoked, right? You can't put yourself in that kind of situation. You'll see a lot of times, you'll see tour players, you're seeing it right now if you're watching the US Open, where you'll see some guys, they're chipping it way past the hole in that kind of situation. And that's because they want to give themselves a landing spot that they can achieve, but they understand, okay, this might roll 15 feet by the hole, 20 feet by the hole, but at least I'm giving myself a chance. Whereas if I try to land it in a perfect spot and I land it short, I'm just going to be in the same position again, right? Because you're just leaving yourself in the rough or wherever you might be. So it's not anything different for ball position, assuming, all things equal, it's a good lie or whatever. It's middle of the stance. You just want to put your body, you're swinging down with the slope. Understand that the slope is going to de-loft the club, so it's going to come out hotter, right? And you just have to deal with that. You have to take your medicine sometimes. It may not be a shot that you can hit very close. You don't, a lot of these shots you can hit close, but you would have to hit the perfect shot. So I'd only have to do that if you're in a match play situation where you're already toast. You just got to do this to tie the hole or whatever. Then sure, yeah, go for it. Try to hit your perfect spot. But if you're playing stroke play and you're just playing against yourself, you got to take your medicine sometimes. I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. So it is a difficult shot. Go with the slope. You're not doing anything different. You just got to understand it's going to come out hotter because the slope is de-lofting the club, and it's going to come out hotter because of that. So I'd use as much loft as you can to do that. So Louis says, how much time should one devote to each part of the game? Putting, chipping, longer club, etc. It really just depends on, what I recommend doing is looking at what your strengths and weaknesses are, because most of us are going to have, some of us are going to be good putters and bad chippers, or good putters, good chippers, but poor ball striking with the iron. So what I recommend doing is spread everything pretty equally, but put extra time in the stuff that you struggle with the most, right? So let's say you have 4 hours to practice a week. What you could do is you could do, 1 hour putting, 1 hour, chipping, and then 1 hour long game, and then that extra hour be on whatever you're struggling with the most, right? So if you're struggling with your putting the most, you may spend 2 hours on putting, 1 hour on chipping, 1 hour on long game, right? That's kind of the way I would look at it. There's no perfect formula. It's really about specific to you and what your needs are. So you should have some sort of idea of, okay, yeah, I'm a terrible this. Or, what you can work on is like what you feel like would help your game the most, right? Would lower your scores the most. You should be able to think about your game and think, okay, if I did X, my scores would go down Y, right? So that's what I'd be looking at. Okay, if I putted better, if my putting was a lot better, because I'm 3 putting 5 greens around or something like that. Well, then if I could cut that down to where it's 1 or 2, that takes 3 strokes off my game, right? So that's kind of the kind of thing that I'd be looking at. All right, we got about 10 minutes left. While you guys are coming up with questions, I'm going to get a refill here. All right, so Jim asks, what's been your most effective drill for weight shift, still having a hard time moving to lead side enough? Most effective drill, I think, is the step drill. So the step drill is where you start with your feet close together, and then you swing the club back, and then as you're swinging the club back, you step forward, right? And that forces you to get your momentum going back in the backswing. Now, I'm guessing that you've probably done that drill because you've probably been struggling with your weight shift and you've seen that drill a lot. It's really the most effective one. And if you're struggling with it, then what's happening is there's probably something going on in your swing that's not allowing you to shift your weight to your lead side. So what that means is you might be doing something in your swing where if you shifted your weight, it would lead to a very poor result. So most likely, usually what that is an over the top kind of swing. So let me explain. So if you swing over the top, right? So I'm like this, I'm coming down steep and over the top. That moves the low point of my swing arc more toward the target, right? So if I swing over the top, my club's going to bottom out more toward my lead foot, right? So if I were to shift my weight also, right, get to my lead side, that also shifts my low point forward. So if I come over the top and I shift my weight forward, I'm going to have a really hard time hitting the golf ball, right? So what can I do if I'm coming over the top and steep? What can I do to be able to hit the golf ball? Well, I can hang back on my back foot and still be able to hit the ball fine. So that's usually what it is when someone is struggling with getting that weight shift. It's because they're doing something else in their swing and they're actually not shifting their weight as a way to hit a functional shot, as a way to hit the golf ball. So that's what I would look at is if you're coming down steep, because that's likely there's red flags or alarms going off in your head saying, if I shift my weight, bad things are going to happen, right? Because they will. If you're coming down steep and over the top and you shift your weight, you may miss the golf ball if you're even able to hit it at all. So that's what I would look at. Are you coming down steep over the top and see if that's what's stopping you from getting your weight shifted to your lead side, because that's usually what's going on. And if it is, then I'd recommend working through our 20-minute shallowing fix to get that club shallowing out, so that way you can shift your weight more easily to your lead side and not worry about having to chop down on the ball way in front. To get to that course, click the instruction tab, then the 20-minute shallowing fix from there. All right, keep the questions coming here. Got time for maybe one more if we get it in time. All right, we'll go ahead and wrap it up right there. Thanks, everybody, for joining me. Be back here Monday. Hopefully, I'll be able to talk better by then. Back here Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Everybody have a great weekend. Happy Father's Day. And I'll talk to you next time.